For this experiment, you're going to need any kind of chocolate. I'm just using some Hershey bars, 3 small bowls and 3 large bowls. Make sure they're all about the same size, some water, a thermometer, a stopwatch, a measuring cup, and a pot. These are the standards that this lesson will be covering, and you can find these at WV Tree or Next Gen Science Standards. So what exactly is the point of this experiment? Well, did you know that actually both weather and climate are 2 different things? When it comes to weather, we're observing the different conditions in an area over the course of a couple of weeks. So for example, over the next few days in London, it's going to be cool and rainy. However, the climate is observed over the course of multiple decades. So in London, they have a temperate climate. This means that they have mild summers and cool winters. There are 6 different major climate regions: arid, tropical, polar, temperate, Mediterranean, and continental. Each climate is different and experiences different weather types, and scientists are always measuring the different weather types that occur in these areas. So an area may have a different climate type now than it will in 500 years. So now we're going to begin our experiment. We're just using chocolate as a visual to see the difference in the temperatures from these different climate regions. So you're going to want to figure out what temperatures you're using. I'm using temperatures from Venice, Mecca, and Wheeling. Also make sure that your bowls and your chocolate are room temperature, because if they're too warm or too cold, that could mess up your results. Once your items are room temperature and you have taste tested your chocolate, make sure you have washed your hands, and you can now divide your chocolate into even pieces. If you're using a Hershey bar, you can use about 2 rectangles per bowl. I wouldn't use more than 3. And if you're using chocolate chips, you may use however many you want, as long as the bowl has about the same amount. Or you can just put in about a tablespoon. But don't fill the bowl past the halfway mark. If you fill the bowl all the way to the top, it will take longer to receive your results. This is just an extra step that I took just so I could remember the temperatures. Next, I'm adding my small bowls into my larger bowls, and I'm going to start adding in my water. I started off by putting in unheated water into the bowl very carefully to make sure that it wouldn't overflow, and I only added in about 3/4 a cup of water. Before we head to the next step, I wanted to share some tips and suggestions with you. You might have to pause to read some of these, but I highly recommend that you consider these suggestions because they helped me during the whole experiment. Now we're taking the water from our bowl and adding it to our pot. If the area you chose has a low temperature, it will not take long for it to heat up. However, if your area has a high temperature, then consider thinking about the following questions while you're waiting for your water to heat up. Which chocolate do you think is going to melt the fastest? Without Googling it, what weather do you think can be recorded in these areas that you are observing? For some reason I forgot to film this part, but once your water is heated to the temperature you're observing, you can carefully add that water back into your large bowl. Make sure you don't get any water into your small bowl in the process. As soon as you're done, then you can start your stopwatch, and then you can repeat the previous steps with the other bowls. So, as you can see, I've made it to my final bowl. What I'm timing is how many minutes it took for each chocolate to melt and how much it melted in 8 minutes. Now you can do that in less than 8 minutes, but it's just the time that I chose. These are the final results. All chocolates were timed for 8 minutes and were given the same procedure. However, they each obviously had different temperatures. Like I said before, I timed each of them for 8 minutes, and I was timing how long it took for each of the chocolates to melt. Mecca only took 33 seconds to melt, and by the time the 8 minutes was up, it was still melting. My hypothesis was correct that it would melt the most. Wheeling took a little longer with about 56 seconds, and my hypothesis was that it would only melt a little. It certainly melted way more than I expected, and I was surprised. Venice didn't melt at all. I hypothesized that it would melt only a little bit, so my hypothesis was incorrect. I did not expect that it wouldn't melt at all, so that was surprising. Thank you so much for doing another activity with me, and I hope this was fun. If you are following the worksheet, there are some follow-up questions at the end. Thank you so much for watching.